Okay, recording. All right, so we started the other day, React. We are continuing with React. What is that? So Monday we started our React, and today we continue with that. And we are going to get somewhere where we've been before with JavaScript, but this time we will be doing it with specifically with React. And so we're going to have read, ultimately in the second version, fetch a JSON file, and then have a set of options and look at those options in a drop-down list and have the various information displayed, but do it with React. And so in React, our idea is that we will have almost nothing on the page in HTML, and that the page will be generated more dynamically. Okay. So here is my first version of those art books, the anatomy art books. I think you did it for a lab. Now it is a classroom example in React. So I have opened it up. That's in downloads. Okay. So code. I'm going to open the folder to downloads. That's the one I want. So I have here in this React, I have an HTML, a JavaScript, and a CSS. And let's go to the HTML and open it up. Open with live server, there we go. And I didn't put it in a grid or anything nice. I don't have a cart where I can add things. I'm just doing the basics of, I have a bunch of things and I am updating the information. So this book is 48 pages and costs $5.95. This was before inflation. That book is 160 pages and is $9.95. Okay. So here's the HTML. And again, in React, you're expecting the HTML to be almost nothing. Now I can't put these all on one page. So I can put my CSS and my JavaScript in the same page. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to be a little more sophisticated and split them up, but I won't usually insist on that. So if you put them all in one page, that'll be okay. So I have a head. I have a meta tag. I have a title, standard stuff. I have a link to the style. Let's have a quick peek at the style since we just mentioned it. Not much style, as I usually say. The body is that blue-gray color. The span is inline block with the width. So I got these things. I have author, ISBN, number of pages, price. I have those all in spans. And then I gave the span an inline block. So inline means it will share a line with other things. So there are other things on the line. We saw that over here, the actual, so that I'm styling the span that says author, but then I also want the name of the author on the same line. So that's why it's in line. And block means I can give it a width. And then I did give it a width. of 10 REMs. So that's what that style's about. And then the image, I put a little padding around the image, on top and the bottom of the image, so then it wasn't jutting up against other things. But these images, I didn't, okay, well, that was that. All right, so that's my style. Back to the HTML. I am working with React. And so this is my connection to the React CDN, the React and the React DOM. So that is those two. And I'm also working with Babel or JSX so that I can write, I'm writing JavaScript that writes HTML, and I can write code that looks more HTML-like if I use Babel. So that's what I'm doing there. I have a div, that's where everything's going to go. So that's where, this is just my empty container where I'm going to insert, React's going to insert all my elements. And I have a script. This script is going to refer to things in the body, and that's why I put it in the body at the bottom of the body. And it's not just normal JavaScript, it is of the type Babel. And it's React Artbook.js. So that's where we're going next. Okay. So this is an extension of the thing that we did last on Monday, where we are getting some user interaction. And so we're going to have a state. Okay. So the book index is the only part of the state that will change. So that is going to be, we saw a drop-down list. The value of this select is this book index. And so when the user chooses a different book, we update the book index. So that's the part of the state that will change. But I also have the information about the books, and that is part of the state, but it's not a part of the state that will change. So the state can have things that we need to know but don't change, and then it also can contain things which do change. So the book index will change depending on the book the user chooses, and then we have the books. And so right now, the second version of this, I'm going to fetch in the book information, but right now I'm hard coding the book information. And I'm using more or less a JSON notation here. So I'm saying I have something called books. It's an array of objects, and those objects have properties like book title, book author. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Book title, book author, book ISBN, etc. And I have a bunch of those, so I have an array of objects. When I put it into the text file, then book title, book author, book ISBN, etc. will also be in quotes. That's one change from the JSON that is in JavaScript, within JavaScript, and the JSON that's in some text file. So this is not exactly what will be in the file. It's close to what's in the file. Okay, so I have a class. I give this class, this is my name, I made it up. I called it my book display because it's going to display a book and it's mine. It's important that the name of the class start with a capital letter. Again, if it won't work, and it's a very hard error to find, so that's why every time I remember to say it, I say it. I'm repetitive, but again, if you make that mistake, that can be a very hard mistake to find, because it's not going to say, oh, hey, you didn't capitalize the name of your class. It's going to have some obscure thing that's hard to interpret. So try to remember to capitalize your class. We're extending the React component. Remember, you always have to have you always have to have render. Whenever you are responsible, you're always responsible for render. And then we're going to have some more things. We're going to have a state, and we're going to have the response to an event. Okay. So again, we set up the state. One property of the state was the book index. I'm starting it at 0. So when I start the page, I'm at the 0th book. If I change it to, and then I refresh the page, it goes back to the beginning. So that's what that's saying. Start off the state with the book index being 0, then here are the books. And again, this JSON notation, array of objects with properties, book title, book author, book ISBN, etc. So I hard-coded the JSON in there. Here's the end of the array. Here's the end of the, what is that the end of? That's the end of the state. And this must be the end of the constructor. Okay. So if you want, you could say, you could comment those. I didn't, I won't, but so we're done with the constructor. This is the method that handles the change. So when the user changes, and the only thing the user can do is change the drop-down select. When the user does that, this is the method we call. All right, okay. I am not in this method changing the picture, and I am not in this method changing the information. The information is going to be based on the state, including the book index. And when I change the book index, that information will get updated. So I don't have to say, okay, it's just because I'm doing it a different way. I will somewhere have to say the image is controlled by this book index, but I don't here in this method. This is the method that handles the changing of the dropdown. But all I do is say I'm changing an index, and then I will elsewhere make everything dependent on book index. There is also, and it's not just that I chose to do it this way. It's like I was sort of forced to do it this way. This set state is asynchronous. We played around a little bit with fetching a file. And I don't know that anybody made this mistake in, say, in the labs where we were fetching files. But if you put stuff, there's stuff that you can't do outside, that you have to do here and that you can't do outside. And this one's almost sort of like the opposite, but a related idea of I can't change the book index and then within this method start using the new book index, because it kind of rushes ahead and does the stuff before I manage to change it. So I can't update the picture here, and I can't update the information here, because if this takes too long, this other stuff goes ahead and starts working, and it won't update, or maybe it'll partially update. So that's what all this blah, blah, blah is about. So we don't, the contents of this thing, I'm not going to go one line of code, then the next line of code, then the next line of code. If this updating the state takes a while, but I start using book index, it'll be wrong. It'll be the old book index. So it's not just that I choose to do it this way. It's more I have to do it this way because of the way this set state is. There is this event that has the bar through it and says then it's deprecated. And in my best understanding of this right now is that this is a mistake on Visual Studio Code's part. There is an event thing in JavaScript that is deprecated, but not this use of event within React. So it's not stopping it from working. It's just sort of trying to raise our awareness of something. And we're going to say, thanks very much, leave it as it is. Okay, so don't get too freaked out by this deprecated thing. Okay, now the render. So that's going to handle some event. Now let's make the drop-down list so that we have something to handle. And that belongs in render because we're making something that's going to be seen on the page. That's what render means. So I've said a number of times that I said a number of times on Monday anyway, that when you're doing this React stuff and when you're doing render within React and you're sending back HTML, it wants at the highest level of HTML, it wants a single sibling. It wants just one parent of everything else. I want to send a select, I want to send a header, I want to send spans, I want to send an image. I have all sorts of things I want to send, but it only wants me to send one thing. And so here's my one thing. I could make this a div, and that's kind of standard, but it's also, you can give it this sort of fake div, I'll call it, just open, close, angle brackets. And that is called a React fragment. And it sort of serves the same purpose as a div. And so there's the opening of the fragment. There's the closing of the fragment. And so everything between the open fragment and the closed fragment gets all bundled up into this one container. And so it counts as returning one thing. What's in this one thing? Okay. I have a header. I'm doing, what am I doing? I am doing Babel. Babel allows me to write, although I'm in JavaScript, it allows me to write some HTML looking stuff. So I'm sending it a header. This bizarro thing of curly / star, that is a comment. So it looks like a comment. It turned out green. It's not some code. It's just me writing stuff. But this is again, I'm in this very weird spot where I'm in JavaScript writing, but I'm making very HTML looking stuff. And so the you don't want to write an HTML comment. That'll confuse it. You don't want to write pure JavaScript comment. Up here, I could write a JavaScript comment. I'm just in some method. But down here where I'm returning, I'm started to use my Babel. And so I'm half JavaScript, half HTML. And so I have a new kind of comment. You know how I like to give you a point for a comment. I might give you a point for a comment within a render. And That's not an easy thing to do. That might be worth 2 points. Okay. So I'm sending back my single thing. So I sent a React fragment. I had a comment. Here's a header. Here's a select. The select has a value. That's which book we chose. And that is related back to our state and is related to the book index. And when you change the select, it calls the handle change that we saw above. And all handle change did was change the book index. Let's look at handle change one more time. Handle change. It set the state and it changed the book index. Event was what got me here. The change of the select, the change of the drop-down select, and it gave me the value of the drop-down select. And it's used that index to give me book index. So I'm making a select that has a value and has a change event. I want my choices, my options of my drop-down select to be the books. So I'm in a class, and this refers to the object of the class. The class has a thing called the state. So I'm in the state. The state had a thing called books. Books was an array. I'm using map, which is one of our ways of looping. And then I have, as I loop, I have the element of the array I'm looping over, which I called a book. I could call it item. I could call it object. I could call it poop. It's just a dummy name. And I'm also working with an index. So I'm in my looping, my arguments are the elements I'm looping over and the index of the object that I'm looping over. I have a fat arrow function here, and I'm creating an open option and a close option. In the open option, I have a value, which is the index of the array. You should be used to this by now. The most useful thing to work with behind the scenes when you have an array is the index of the array. There is between the open option, I have to come back and tell you what key is, but between the open option and the close option is what we show the user, and that's the title of the book. So we have this curly bracket. Book is just my dummy name of an object, but we saw that the objects had a property book underscore title. So this was my name. It just has to match up here, but this came from the data above and has to match that. Here is the parentheses of the function of the map. Here is the close of the map function. Here is this close curly bracket. So between select, open select, and close select, I had some curly brackets to indicate that I was going to have some code, and that code was going to be a loop over one of the properties of my state. Pardon. And then I have a break, so I have some space. Here again is my curly slash star, yada, 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 star slash curly, my JSX comment. Okay, I'm in the weird land. I'm halfway between JavaScript and HTML, so I can't use quite either for my comment. Here's my image tag. IMG, SRC, what is the source of my image? I have an array of books. This is, I'm in a class. This refers to the object of the class. It has a property states. The state has a property books. Books is an array, so square bracket. Then I want the index. My index is this.state.book index. Close off the square bracket. Now I have a particular element of my array, and then I want a property of that object. for the source, and so that's my book cover. This is like, let me close the Explorer. We save, close the Explorer. So that's a very complicated thing the first time you see it, but then we do it over and over and over again. So long as we're doing React, we will have things that look like this. So get used to it. I'm changing the source. So remember, I told you this before, when here's my event that handles the user changing the select option. I do almost nothing here. All I do is say, that's the new book index. That's all I say here. Because everything I want to do then is down here, that the source of the image depends on the book index. So when my state gets changed, automatically React, instead of me writing the explicit code, automatically React said, oh, the state changed and this image depended on the state. Oh, let me update the image. And then there's the height of my image so that they weren't all super colossal big. All right, so that was the image, and that's how the image got updated. It got updated based on the book index. Here's the author. Here's my span that says, just says author. And then after that, I have this.state.books, square bracket, this.states.bookindex, close square bracket, dot book author. Long and complicated, but it's just comes up within React. It just keeps coming up, coming up, coming up, coming up. You get used to it. Here's the ISBN, same thing, but book ISBN. The number of pages, the same thing, but book pages or book page number or whatever it was, book page now. And then the price is the book price, and I send it to fixed. The $sign here is just a $sign. It's just that $sign. Sometimes $sign has a special meaning, not here. That $sign is just a $sign. There's the end of my return, the end of my render, the end of my class. It is all for naught if you do not put it on the page. 160 puts it on the page. Any questions? I'm just going to do it all over again, but instead of hard coding the data, I'm going to fetch. But that introduces another situation, and that is you have to do something while or until the book is fetched, until the book information is fetched, we have to do something. Otherwise, it will try to race ahead and become confused. Okay, so let me get the next version. So all I'm going to do is, instead of hard coding the JSON data, I'm going to fetch the JSON data. It'll be like 85% the same, but there will be some differences. That's what we have to see. Okay, so I extracted that, my terminal, my Explorer, where am I pointing? So React, that's not what I want. File, open folder, downloads. And I want React art book fetch JSON Spring 22. Okay. Let me close these. The CSS is the same. Oh, I think I maybe changed the colors. The JS, there's going to be a lot of change in the JS. The there's the JSON. So the JSON came out and that was a file I'm going to read. And here's the HTML. So the HTML didn't really change, except I changed it to just Art CSS and Art JS. But otherwise, the HTML didn't really change. The CSS didn't really change. Let's run it. It didn't change, except I might have changed the colors. And that doesn't look. Well, that was working when I posted it, I think. And let me try one more. Oh, no, that's okay. All right, sorry. That's nothing. Babel, failed to load source. The server responded to status Babel. Why didn't it like my Babel? Wasn't it just fine a minute ago with the other Babel? Sorry, here's the Babel. And that one was opening just fine. So here I am in the fetch JSON one. And open it with live server. There it is. Okay. Something must have been wrong with my Babel. Now it's okay. So swear it worked in my office an hour or two ago, but for some reason, the message seemed to say there's something wrong with my Babel. I went back to the first version where I had Babel and it worked, and copied it and pasted it in, and now it seems to work. I don't know if that's a coincidence or if I have something wrong. Let me know if yours isn't working, and I'll upload the version with the correct Babel if there is a mistake in the Babel link. Okay. So it is the same thing, except now the data is fetched. And I have to show you something that is, I'm gonna open it in the incorrect way. So where am I at? React, fetch JSON Spring 22, that's where I'm at. I'm gonna do the thing that I shouldn't do. I'm gonna not use the live server. Then we know that the fetch isn't going to work. And here's the fetch not working. And what is the inspect here saying? Access to fetch JSON is, so it's not the same message that it was before, because that said something about Babel. This one's saying something about HTTP request. That's the fetch. So the fetch isn't working. That's on purpose. Then I opened it. See, up here, it's starting at C. That means I'm opening it sort of locally and not using the server. And the security is that it can't open a file when I open it as if it's from a local file. Okay. So that was a mistake on purpose of me opening it without the live server, and that is disrupting the fetch. Okay. All right, so back to the blah, blah, blah. So I showed you the CSS. And so I can close that. I showed you the CSS. It was midnight blue now. That's about all I did. Take that away. The HTML, I need to keep that open because if I want to run it to say something, that's what I open in the live server. So I'll keep, even though I've shown you the HTML, I'll keep it open. Here's the JSON file. Always, always, always look at my JSON files to see how to code them. This is starting with an array. You know me, I have other JSON files that start with an object. This one starts with an array. So when I read in the JSON file, it's immediately an array. If I read in a JSON file that was an object, I might have to access the property of that object that is an array to do an array things. This one is immediately an array. If you ask me at some point what would change if it were starting off with an object, I will show you, but if you don't ask, I might never show you. We'll see. So here's the JSON. It's an external file now. Local, but an external file. Start off with square brackets, starts off with an array of objects. So this is the data that was in. Here's that one change. I promised you that the names, when I'm in an external file, the names of the properties now go in quotes. Okay, let's get to the JSON. I have a class, and then I make an object of that class and put it on the page. So everything's in the class. Almost all the stuff's in the class, but it is a class. If you don't sort of, make one of the things and put it on the page, you're not going to see anything. Okay. So now here's the class. Remember, a capital letter. We're extending the React component. I have a constructor. I have super props. So when you're extending something, super means give me all the standard stuff that comes with the super class, and then I'll add to it. So here is my state. Book index is going to be changed by the user. We saw that. Book index is at this stage an empty array. Books is a property of the state, but right now it's an empty array. It's going to be populated when we fetch the JSON file, and then it won't change after that. So book index will be changed based on what the user does. Books will be changed by the system after the file is written. And same thing for is loading. So I start off with a property called is loading, and that is set to be true. And then when I'm done reading the file, I will say is loading is false. And I'm going to make my render depend on this property. So I have the render is going to have an if. It's going to ask if it's loading or not. And I'll render differently depending on whether I've fetched the file yet or not, because it takes a while to fetch the file. I'm going to peek down and then come back to this. But while I'm saying here's is loading, where's render? Here's render. What's the first thing in render? There's this question. If state is loading, return loading. So that's what we see that's what we should see if we don't manage to read the file. Otherwise, I go start making stuff. Okay, so that's the state. Here's the change. The change stays the same. That sounds crazy. When the change handle change means when the user changes the value of the drop-down list, I call this function. It changes the book index of the state. That's what it did before. That's what it does now. Here's the new part. Here's where I'm reading the JSON file. You saw fetch before. We've done fetching since, I don't know, maybe lab 7. I'm fetching a file, a local file. So ArcJSON is next to these other files. It is indeed. I am responding when I make this request. And then when I respond, I say JSON is a popular data format that's understood. And then just say return the JSON. So that does the parsing for us. So the first then returns JSON sort of parsed already for us. And so data is understood to be in the next then, the data that was returned from the first then becomes the argument of the second then, and it's understood to be a JSON. And we know, we've looked at this JSON, we know that this JSON is an array. Look at the JSON, this JSON was an array, so data is an array in this problem. Data won't always be an array, but data in this problem is an array. What am I going to do when I get that data? I'm going to set the books property, which was an array, to the data, which was an array. This makes sense because books up in my state was an array, and data in my JSON file that I just read is an array. If one of them was an array and the other one was a class or an object, this wouldn't make sense. It makes sense because it's array. And I set the is loading property to false. So I'm no longer loading, I have now loaded. That's where I read the file. Where did I read the file? In component did mount. So there's this defined method in React, component did mount. That's where I have decided to fetch my file. When I successfully have fetched my file, I change my state. I'm rendering. I have two situations to render. I have the situation to render when I have not finished loading, and then the one where I have loaded. This is me when I have not yet finished reading the file. This is how I render the page. It happens so fast that you don't get to see this. But you do see this if I open it incorrectly. I have to look at my style because I'm seeing just a blank page, but I should see the word loading ... So I have to look at my style. I might have like blue writing on blue background or something stupid. Let me try again to open this the bad way. So here it is, open the bad way. And can I see? No, I can't. I'm trying to highlight something. I can't highlight anything. I don't know why I'm not seeing my paragraph, but I'm not seeing my paragraph. I'm not seeing this word loading. I have to look into that. Okay. Here's the return. Here's my React fragment instead of a div. Here's my header. Here's my select. Here's me looping over the books. Here's me writing the select, making sure the value is the book index. This part's the same. The change, this is the same. Here's me between the open select and the close select, looping over the books in the state, using the map function, creating the option. The value was I. Oh, I never did say what the key was. When you in React create a number of things in some kind of loop, it wants its own behind the scenes React way to distinguish the things. So it wants a key. And so I give it a key. If I don't give it a key, it complains. So I give it a key and it shuts up. End of story as far as I'm concerned. React wants things to have a key for the purposes of React. The key should be unique. If I have multiple things, if I'm populating a drop-down select, and I'm also populating a bunch of radio buttons or something like that, then I'll add something to the key to make the one loop distinct from the other loop. But I can keep it simple because the only thing I'm looping over here is the options in my select. Okay. But React, if you take out the key and you run the page, it will probably run. But if you use the console and open it up, you'll get all this red about there not being a key. The key makes it shut up, so you give it a key. Here is these are all my comments. Here's the image, we talked about it. This.state.books, square bracket, this.state.bookindex, close square bracket, .book cover. Get used to that pattern. It happens over and over again in React, especially in the type of React I'm going to give you. I think that's it. I think I've said everything now. Are there any questions? What are you going to do? Pretty much the same thing. You're going to change art books into Harry Potter movies. And so mostly, it's mostly copy. And then, as always, the hard part is to know what to change and what not to change. Okay. So what are we doing? We're going to use React and Babel. If you're copying me, you're using Babel. If you just want to use pure React, that's acceptable. You're going to fetch the file of Harry Potter. Here's some movie posters. What does this Harry Potter data look like? The Harry Potter is not an array, it's an object. Pay attention. Okay. And Harry Potter, okay. So you're reading, you're going to fetch the file, it's JSON. You have to be a little bit careful because it's different than what I gave you because the JSON is different. JSON is a class, not an array. You're going to show me in the drop-down select the titles of the movies. With the user changes, you're going to show me new information. You're going to show me a new movie poster. You're going to have an iframe like we did in, I don't know, TED Talks or something, and also kid songs. You're going to have an iframe that goes over and shows a YouTube video. All right. Sometimes my YouTube videos, there's a setting on YouTube videos that says whether it can be embedded or not. And that can change. The person can change that. So if the person who posted these trailers for the Harry Potter movies, if they change that status, then one of them or two of them might not work. If none of them work, it's probably you. If one of them, if most of yours work and one or two of them doesn't work, that's probably me. Questions for the recording? Nobody's asking a question.